Bon retour dans les épisodes. No, nothing.
You're speaking a different language again. Our French listeners are going to be commenting.
Welcome back to this week's episode. C'est votre fantôme d'hôte with the most, Shanna.
This is Puckwa PJ speaking English.
Well,
Je suis Puckwa PJ. PJ, what it should be.
AJ. This episode is brought to you by Maggie's Casket, LLC. If you're looking for a spooky lady who can teach you to paint, then look no further than this company. Maggie's Casket offers a variety of painting and sipping endeavors. Currently, there are about 10 seats open for the Mother's Day Spooktacular event on May 7th. You threw me off because you went, May 11th.
Didn't know they were having a painting thing. It's awesome.
Maybe you should pay attention for Mother's Day. Jeez. Anyway, on May 11th at Craven and Castor Creations in Blakely, PA, take your mama and paint and sip with her. It will be a terracotta pot painting, which is something new and different for Maggie's Casket compared to her usual canvas painting fun. So, get your spooky on.
Not gonna lie, we had a great time when we did this.
Don't remember any of it, but my painting is phenomenal.
I highly recommend.
I do. And it's also BYOB. She supplies some, but you can supply more fun if you want to.
Yeah.
If that's the case, take Laura and Ray. They supply very well.
Yeah, they do.
All right. Before we get into this episode tonight, I would like to remind all our listeners that this Saturday, April 13th, we will be at the Helix Tabletop Guild for their annual Janet Weiss Children's Hospital charity event.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be amazing.
It was last time.
It was.
Can't wait.
It's in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, and our current winner from our newest giveaway said he will meet us there, which is exciting.
At least he's hoping to.
Yes. So no mailing necessary. So congratulations, Anthony. So happy for you for winning. We are getting, again, very, very close to 20,000 listens, which means we have to do another giveaway. Which means I got to go shopping on Temu again. Oh, shucks. It's so difficult.
Oh,
it's
no.
so hard. Oh, I guess so. All right. So before I dive into tonight's evening event, I would like to first mention my references, which are Ghost City Tours, Legends of America, History.com, 64 Parishes, Portland State University, and, of course, Wikipedia. So this episode is called, well, I'm calling it, The Macabre Madame LaLaurie, which is why I'm speaking French. Oh, yeah. For tonight's episode, we are once again heading down to Bayou Way. We're going right into Le Quartier Français. I would like to tell the story of none other than The Macabre Madame LaLaurie. I just love speaking the French. Makes me so happy. I gotta do some more Louisiana stories. There are many falsehoods that surround the mad madam.
Mm-hmm.
This is mostly due to the fact that, number one, she never got in trouble for the terror she unleashed upon those in more vulnerable positions than her. And two, boy, does gossip make the story grow. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It's all
How
the
about
sensationalism of word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you already know who Madame LaLaurie is, congratulations. But a lot of us know a bit about her thanks to the TV show series American Horror Stories and their season The Coven.
Yep.
She played the role of a major antagonist, and I'm not surprised because in life she was a pure monster. I would hold that she was a true sociopath, hiding in plain sight. During the day and in front of polite company, she was the pillar of upper-class Creole society. However, in the comfort and camouflage of her own home, she was a true monster. But the question is, who was the Mad Madame? And I know you know some about her.
A little bit. I honestly, I haven't really had time to research a whole lot, so my resources won't be giving me too much. Okay. I'll just be running off memory from what I learned months ago.
Oh, okay. First, before I even get into her background, I would like to reference just the French of her name because she is Creole. She comes from a very well-known family. And so her last name, because she was married 3 times, was LaLaurie. And so it's L-A for La, which means the. And then we pronounce it Laurie in America, the name Laurie, L-A-U-R-I-E. But in French, when you have an A-U, you pronounce it from the top of your mouth. So it's La.
Yeah.
Like the name Fleur in Harry Potter, it's F-L-E-U. That's an sound. Yep. So it's pronounced in the middle of your mouth. But it should be La in the top of your mouth. And so people mispronounce it La Laurie, which drives me nuts. I guess it's like an American. Oh, see, Americans.
So I pronounce it.
Mama would be very upset with you. She would scream
Yeah.
La Chaussettes at you continually.
Though, I did learn in my research, and I'm very happy about it. Well, I don't know how happy I am about it, but I'm pleased that, because when I was researching and I saw what she looked like, I'm like, man, Kathy Bates would be great in this role.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And she played her in American Horror Story.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, perfect. They got her.
I love that they have her like in these roles of like very strong, powerful woman, like in the Titanic. She plays the unsinkable Molly Brown, right?
Misery.
Yeah,
The
I love
Office.
it. And she does such a great job in like, these terrible roles like Misery.
Mhm.
Born Marie Delphine McCarty on March 19th, 1787, Delphine was one of 5 children. Her family was incredibly wealthy and well-known. Her parents were prominent participants in the European Creole community. Her uncle was governor of the Spanish-American provinces of Louisiana and Florida, and her cousin was mayor of New Orleans from 1815 to 1820. So to say that she was a part of the upper class, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
No question.
Oh, yeah.
And she had quite the stake in what would be early America, because most of her family was a part of Haiti or a part of the southern United States, where we were still, Louisiana Purchase. Louisiana is still huge, right? This is before Louisiana was even bought. So she is a part of the very beginnings of America. Being of a wealthy Southern family, slavery was common and, in fact, an assumed part of wealthy class life in the South. Delphine had a distorted view of slavery, people assume, due to her close proximity to the Haitian Revolution of 1791, where slaves rebelled against their slaveholders. This made slaveholders in the Southern United States very afraid, as slaves usually outnumbered their owners in high numbers.
Mm-hmm.
On average, it was 1 to 20.
Wow.
In about 1790.
Yikes.
Yeah, to put in context, there were over 700,000 slaves in the United States in 1790, and this would only increase to about 4 million by the time the Civil War broke out. So no surprise, there is a generalized fear of rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Delphine was only 4 years old when the Haitian Rebellion erupted, and in fact, her uncle had been killed years prior by his slaves, which happened before the Haitian Revolution, but again, added more fear. There was also the Mina Conspiracy of 1791 when she was 5 years old, and the Point Coupé Conspiracy of 1794. This all created a distorted view of and generalized fear of insurrection in Delphine, and this may in fact be part of the reason why she was so abusive toward her slaves, the same abuse and macabre actions that eventually led her to infamy and into the spooky recesses of American culture.
Yeah. Even though, like, in New Orleans, it was illegal to be abusive to slaves, and yet
I would
she still
hold
got
like
around it. And again,
there were I get into the general conduct rules,
yeah,
and the
it's
Article
still,
20. Like I get into that.
Yeah, because they still have like rule of thumb type things. Like you can still use like whips as long as they're a certain width, or like sticks as long as they're a certain width against your slaves, and manacles. But the things she did were
beyond that.
Yeah, beyond
the
that.
scope of what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
Yes.
And actually, I used a really nice article from a university from Portland State, and it kind of goes into a lot of discussion about the articles and the rules. I don't want to say rules of thumb, but like the rules when engaging in slaveholding.
Yeah, I said that as like an example, but
no, because she don't want beyond that. Gee, the rule of thumb, okay, the rule of fist for her, it feels like. And height. Let's talk about stools.
Yeah.
We'll talk about stools later.
Okay, you could find stuff on the stools. I tried researching that. Okay.
Did you see me on the couch?
Oh, I saw your stacks of papers.
Thank you. I did a lot of research because I don't believe in telling you fake information.
That's
so
right.
We are going to go into the reels here. And so I actually have some opinions on her. But the reason why I waited to do this story now is because so many of the dates in our family crop up in her story. And I will say the dates loudly, and you're like, oh my.
Uh-oh.
There's a reason why I'm doing this story right before Eli's birthday.
Uh-oh.
All right. So not only does she have a distorted view of slavery due to what's happening around her, but there's also some really sad facets of her early childhood and life that make me sick. So going back to my script, there are some other rather sad and gross facts about Delphine, which I believe may have added to her messed up nature. She was married to a Spanish officer when she was only 13 years old. Some reports say 14, but I did the math. She was 13.
Okay.
On June 11th, 1800, she was married to Don Ramon Lopez y Angulio. Don Ramon is what I call him, who was himself a 35-year-old widower. He was a high-ranking Spanish officer, and there is a whole side story that he should not have married her without requesting the marriage from the crown because he was a high-ranking Spanish officer.
Mm-hmm.
He just couldn't wait to marry her because I guess she was so gorgeous in her 13-year-old. Yeah, gross. Now, there is some subterfuge. This may be why he died young, but we cannot be sure because of a generalized lack of information. Remember, it was literally 1800.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1804, Delphine gave birth to their first child, Marie Borgia, whom they nicknamed Borquita. This was also the year that Don Ramon would die en route to Madrid, probably to apologize and get approval for the marriage from
and no one knows
4 years
how
ago.
he died either.
No.
He just kind of died en route.
They think that there was an issue with the boat. That's the general consensus. But Delphine was pregnant, and some say she was in tow with him, and then she gave birth.
Yeah.
Like also en route. I do not think she was a Black Widow. Some people think that she killed him. Why would you? He was a high-ranking official. She was young and pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave her a very comfortable station in life.
Yeah.
But she was only 17 at this moment and now would head back to New Orleans, a brand new mommy and also a brand new widow. So then 4 years later, she marries again. In 1808, she's at the age of about 21. She marries Jean Blanc. He was a wealthy banker, merchant, lawyer, legislator, and, of course, a major slave trader.
Classy.
So good looking, I guess, for her.
Ugh.
He was also a close associate of the pirates Jean and Pierre Lafitte. It was actually thanks to Blanc that in 1814 he got the pirates to offer assistance to defend New Orleans against the British in the War of 1812. So it just shows you how central to society Delphine and her chosen husbands really were. That's how high class she was. She married the guy who saves the day in New Orleans thanks to his letter to get the pirates to help out.
Yeah.
Kind of fun to say. But the truth is, if they hadn't helped out, we would be in a very different America because the British definitely would have taken New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, she was married to him for 8 years, and they had 4 children together. She had 3 girls and 1 boy with him, so that's 5 kids now. Now, it was her second marriage, as mentioned, but it was not a happy one. From all accounts, Jean Blanc was a man with money issues, and his death / possibly just running away in 1815. Like, I don't know if he's actually dead. Like, well, he is now, but it's 200 years ago.
Some say he's still out there,
Dun, 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 dun.
pirating, hiding his treasure.
With the Lafitte's. Some people say that he ran away because he was so embarrassed by what the money issues that he had, and he left her strapped with it.
I read one where it was because of what she was doing to the slaves, and he's like, "I'm out." Even though that would have been early.
No. All the stuff that I've read, from what I see,
it doesn't match up.
No, he was just a guy who could not keep money, and so he runs away, or dies, and that leaves her, riddled with debt and 5 children to raise. Now, the goodish news is her dad passes away not long after, and she inherits all of his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now she is, independently wealthy, and she can take care of her kids. So that's why she has her final marriage. And some people think she married for love. I don't know. All right, There's a whole story to this too. But her final marriage would be to a doctor named Leonard Louis Nicolas LaLaurie, possibly in 1825 or in 1828, depending on what you're reading. It's very important to note that because little interesting story if they got married in 1828. That's all I'm saying. But I'm going to call him Dr. Louis because it's just funny in my head.
Okay.
And anyway, at this point, she is at least 38 years old when she marries him. So
okay.
In 1825, she'd be that old. Mm-hmm. Further on, 41. Okay. He was 15 years younger than her. There are many reasons people gave for her to have married him instead of her just being some kind of cougar, which, at this point, she's independent. Why not? YOLO. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's like old maid territory at that time.
Yeah, but she's also wealthy, so.
Yeah.
She comes with kids. And she still gives him more. So, like, she's still popping babies out. But anyway, he was definitely of a lower station, which is why she should not have married him, really. But he did study medicine at the Sorbonne in France in that time period. That was like the thing to do. So it made him like a big asset. Plus, he studied, I'm going to call it chiropractic medicine, but it wasn't that back in the day. It was, it's 1800s. So it's let's torture your kid. And there is information that one of her daughters possibly had scoliosis or some kind of back issue. And Dr. Louis was well versed in chiropractic medicine, which again was just bodily torture to try and straighten your back out. You don't lay someone down like basically on a stretcher and go, I'm going to fix your back by stretching you and cracking your back a bunch of times. That'll do it. That's how scoliosis is fixed, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So these two may have become associated due to him trying to straighten out the crooked back of, and I'm quoting actual text here, Mademoiselle Blanc, the hunchbacked young lady. Isn't that nice?
Lovely.
Nice name. So this is where I wonder, was it 1825 or 1828? Because of marriage records, I'm going to go with the 1828.
Okay.
Because there was definitely a relationship between Delphine and Dr. Louis, since the St. Louis Cathedral, not St. Louis, but I'm going to say St. Louis because it's still funny, cathedral marriage and baptismal records. We learned that they had a son named Jean-Louis LaLaurie, and he was born August 13th, 1827. However, Delphine and Dr. Louis were not married until January 12th,
What?
1828. What a fun date, just saying, my birthday. But again, that means they got married after their son Jean was born. And Wikipedia said 1825 was their marriage. Doesn't match up at all. Just saying. I think maybe they met in 1825 to fix her daughter's back.
Could be.
She gets knocked up and they get married on my birthday. Okay. In any case, they got married. But Delphine definitely wore the pants in the relationship. When they actually got married, she had like a prenup pretty much and said she kept control of everything that was hers, so he couldn't touch it, which was really smart considering with LeBlanc, he left her with so much money debt.
Yeah.
I get it. So she buys property on 1140 Royal Street in the French Quarter, which is where she constructs either a 2-story, 3-story, or 4-story house, depending on the versions you read of these events that unfold. Regardless, it was multiple stories, we're going to call it that. And she planned the whole thing. Now, she didn't build it, of course. She paid people to build it, but it was all her plans. She ran it, no input from her husband. Again, he's 15 years her junior. Whatever she says, he does.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's one heck of a place.
Well, it burned down. They rebuilt it a couple times.
Yeah.
So it looks nice, but, it's not like the same house.
It's not exactly
the
same.
Now, the marriage, while giving Delphine the last name, all know her by now, LaLaurie, it was not a happy one. There were at least 2 instances where she petitioned for divorce of separation, but it was not ever permanent because on the fiery morning that would throw Madame LaLaurie into historical record forever, he was there. All right. So, again, she made a petition, but he always came back or something. I'm not really sure how it works. But in one court petition for separation, Delphine stated that Dr. Louis had, quote, treated her in such a manner as to render their living together unsupportable, and that, quote, in the presence of many witnesses, he beat her and wounded her in the most outrageous and cruel manner. Which is what she did to her slaves. But anyway, because we're here because she's the monster. But it didn't last. Again, like I said, Dr. Louis and Delphine and 2 of her daughters lived in the 1140 Royal Street mansion together and maintained a high and central position in New Orleans society for years. So the society was a reigning French Creole society, as mentioned, and she was widely accepted. According to accounts, Delphine threw lavish parties. She was seen as elegant, beautiful, and powerful. She gained her status through her beauty and grace. She was also seen as being rather strong-willed and independent as a female during this time, which drove other females to be mad with jealousy and to kind of make men feel inferior, which is probably why you see so many stories added on with the gossip and the sensationalism of what happened later. We cannot deny that she was a monster, but how far and how sick, that would be history's place to fix.
Yeah.
However, her hospitality was a compliment to her, and her parties were amazing affairs where she was able to charm the pants off anyone. They all loved her. She was famous for dinner parties that were extravagant and filled with the most expensive wine, foods, and decor of unparalleled beauty. The New Orleans Bee once actually stated, "It must, however, have been great indeed, as the furniture alone was of the most costly kind, consisting of pianos, armoires, buffets, ... Needless to say, Delphine knew how to throw a party in the richest section of Louisiana to the richest. And it's actually because of one of her house parties that we now know about the atrocities bestowed by the Mad Madame of 1140 Royal Street. And this is where we will now focus our attention on La Monstrous Madame.
Yeah, because a guest saw something. I believe it was like a one of the slaves in a spiked collar, and notified the authorities, and they had the house inspected.
Oh, that was before this.
Yeah, that was before all this, and like they didn't find anything. Like she hid it very well.
They did not ever find a spike collar before the fire.
Before the fire, yeah, that came later. But like the fact that they were on to her, and looked, they went through the house and didn't find anything.
Yes. Well, don't worry.
She knew what she was doing.
Well, I actually have some theories too.
Okay.
So let me paint you a picture.
All right, I'm ready.
To paint a proper picture of the morning of the fire and the subsequent finding of her slave torture chamber, one must delve into Delphine's treatment of slaves. Now, it was customary to keep slaves in New Orleans at this time, so the LaLaurie mansion had slave quarters. Because, like, when she built the house, she had a whole section built just as the slave quarters.
Yeah.
However...
I mean, we have stuff like that here.
Well, yeah. I know.
Lauren Ray's house, if you listen to episode 1, we talk about how there's, servants stairs.
Chambers. But yeah, slavery was real up through New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah.
During this time period that we're talking about slaves here, there were slaves up in New Hampshire still.
I can't even fathom the idea of, buying and selling people and things like that. And just for that to be a normal thing, what's your occupation? Oh, I deal in the slave trade. Oh, okay.
Makes good money?
I can't even fathom that.
Well, and people always say, we didn't do that up here in North. Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
We called them indentured servants. But anyway, so the condition in which Delphine kept her slaves was horrendous, even by the standards of slave treatment for the time period. The Black Codes, a general set of rules that regarded slavery, stated in Article 20 that slaves who shall not be properly fed, clothed, and provided for by their masters may give information thereof to the Attorney General of the Superior Council or to all the other officers of justice of an inferior jurisdiction, and may put the written exposition of their wrongs into their hands, upon which information, and even ex officio, should the information come from another quarter, the Attorney General shall prosecute said masters. So there wasn't a lot that said, you can't hurt them because they're your property. Go ahead. And you could delve into the Bible and their excuses as to why it's okay to beat and keep slaves, which I don't understand. I actually saw in the Portland State University article a whole discussion about a sermon that was given by a pastor in Louisiana about how, Jesus was alive and the slaves were there, and if he was against slavery, he would have stopped it then. So therefore, slavery is okay. They looked for any reason to keep slaves. And I'm like, but hold on. There's a lot in the Bible.
Love thy neighbor.
He washed everyone's feet and he picked the lady up who was crying. I'm going to move on now. Listen, they looked for reasons. All right.
Yep.
So Delphine was in clear violation of this article long before the morning of the fire, which revealed to the world her atrocities. LaLaurie's acquaintances could not help but notice the condition of the slaves in her home. It had become a local rumor that LaLaurie was in fact abusing her slaves. Guests continually noted that her slave looked tired and malnourished. And that's when you mentioned the whole story of them. Because not only did they notice them looking very skinny and tired, and not just tired, I didn't get sleep, but tired because they didn't have enough nutrients to maintain. They looked like they're going to pass out.
Physically unable to move.
To do their duty. And they also noticed that her daughters, Delphine's daughters, always looked sad and pale and grim, which is part of my conversation later. Okay. So in fact, her slaves commonly were sentenced to harsh punishments, with her neighbors and friends knew about. She would begin with a series of lashes and would not stop until the slave was unconscious. People knew that. Harriet Martineau, commonly we see her as the first female sociologist, recounted tales that LaLaurie's slaves looked, quote, singularly haggard and wretched, but that Delphine would always seem polite to these marginalized people of society when she was in public.
Yeah.
Behind this polite facade, though, lurked a female serial killer, as funeral registers prove. Between the years of 1830 and 1834, there are a documented 12 deaths of enslaved people at her mansion. That's documented.
Yeah. But the cause for death is always super vague.
Yeah.
Or things like that.
You didn't have to say how they died, just that they were dead. So the deaths included a whole bunch, 12 people, but one in particular was Bonne, Bonne, so female for good, Bonne, the cook, and her 4 children. So an entire family annihilated, Now, this is when you mentioned the local lawyer coming. He was sent to the home to remind Delphine of the rules of slave ownership because her slaves looked skinny.
Yeah.
No conversation about a spiked collar. No reference to her whipping her slaves. She did it in public. Again, there is a sensationalized story later that we're going to talk about. But the fact that he was sent because her slaves looked bad, just saying, sent for that.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the lawyer, there was no evidence of wrongdoing or mistreatment seen during his visit. Harriet Martineau also recounted the tale of the death of one 8 or 12-year-old slave, depending on the story you read, who fell to her death to avoid the punishment of Delphine after, again sensationalized, possibly hurting her while brushing her hair.
Yeah, hitting a snag.
Yeah. The story goes that the girl named Leah either jumped to her death or was pushed. Either way, this little girl died and is said to haunt the location to this day. Now, that being said, when your story goes from 8 to 12, I allow for the possibility that we don't know the age because she was young, but there's a lot of holes to that story.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she didn't have a name until like a 1930s thing, listen.
And especially if she was like malnourished too, you wouldn't be able to gauge the age properly, things like that. So age part, get it. Yeah.
Yep. The abuses continued, and even after LaLaurie was forced to free 9 of her slaves, she was still able to buy them all back through a family member.
Lovely loophole, yeah.
It's like, she'd actually, during the time period where 12 documented slaves were killed, she actually freed 2. And they think it was because she's trying to get, like, the press offer. Like, well, look, I freed some, right? Mm-hmm. She's forced to sell 9 of them to make up for her terrible treatment, but then she, like, basically buys them through her family anyway. Yeah. So she gets them all back.
Yeah.
And I think like as those people, like you think you're finally free, not of slavery because you were sold to someone else. Like you're still a slave, but you're finally free of her. And now you're back.
Yeah.
And now she's going to be mad at you because you left, even though she did send you off. And now she's going to take it out on you. Like, you know what's coming. Ugh. Anyway, Delphine also beat her own daughters when they tried to feed the slaves because they were much more receptive to humanity than she was. Mm. And this is why they were often seen as very pale and sad, because if she caught her children feeding the slaves, she would beat them. Yeah. But now, on to the infamous fire. On April 10th, 1834.
Oh, my.
That's why I wait till now, because it's this week.
Yeah.
And if you do the math, it was 190 years ago. A fire broke out in the Royal Street Mansion, and it was started by the 70-year-old cook who was chained to the stove by her ankle. Yeah. People didn't know that she actually chained her slaves to places so they couldn't run and only far enough away that they couldn't steal things too. Now, the cook chose to set the fire as a way to unveil the atrocities of the madame, even though it meant suicide. When she was later questioned because she lives, she said that it was a suicide attempt because she feared being punished, as slaves taken to the uppermost room, quote, never came back. And so when you look at depending on the stories that you're reading, you look at the blueprints, the uppermost room, apparently, according to some sources, was right beside the slave chambers, so they could hear what was happening. Mm. I hope that's not true, but again, according to the different things, like you imagine, next door pretty much is what's happening.
Yeah.
They never come back, and you can't go in there. Ooh. Anyway. Yeah. So no surprise when the fire, starts, people come to gawk at it. It's the 1800s. Mm-hmm. So many locals came to witness the fire and to lend a helping hand. One of those in the crowd was Judge Jacques-François Canong, and it was he who asked permission to remove the slaves to a place of safety from the house. Like, he knew that there were slaves in there because it's New Orleans. LaLaurie came out. Where's the rest of you? Mm-hmm. Don't you have 10 slaves?
Don't worry about it. It's fine. They got out.
No, really, where are they?
No, it's fine.
Madame LaLaurie, where are they? Mm-hmm. So, however, the LaLauries were completely against this, and no one was allowed to go in. Dr. Louis, again, he's there, even though they're supposed to be separated. He actually is quoted as saying, "There are those who would be better employed if they would attend to their own affairs instead of officiously intermingling with the concerns of other people." I.e., get off my lawn.
Yep.
In a very polite way. He also begged for the keys. That's the judge.
Lawyer.
Yeah, the judge begs for the keys, But the LaLauries refuse, so he orders the crowd to break down the doors. He's like, no, we're going to go save these people.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Even by, like, if you're looking at slavery and the cost of human chattel, he's like, you're wasting a lot of money here. You know, like, why are you not more concerned? And that's when they find first the cook chained to her station. They're like, oh, well, this is something. And then they head upstairs.
Yeah.
So when they got to the uppermost room, they found a chamber of horrors. To quote one text, they found, quote, 7 slaves more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. Judge Kanong wrote he found, quote, a negress wearing an iron collar, and an old Negro woman who had received a very deep wound to her head who was too weak to be able to walk.
Yes.
Because he was put under oath to say those things. Imagine seeing that when you walk in.
Yep. And apologies, listeners, for using these words. We're quoting
reading
the
it.
text.
Yeah, I'm reading, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
In general, all the slaves were chained, suspended, disfigured, and all had definitely been tortured. Martineau added to this story with the fact that the slaves looked emaciated, showed signs of being flayed with a whip, were bound in restrictive postures, and wore spiked collars which kept their heads in static positions. You could also pronounce it static positions.
Yes.
Just saying. They were unable to hold themselves or walk and were covered in sores and wounds. According to one account, there was an elderly man who was beaten so badly that his face was indistinguishable. Like you could not make him out at all. And another slave was beaten so badly that her bones were visible on her back.
Yep.
Like she'd been whipped so badly that you could see her bones. There was a stool found up there, as well as an incredibly dirty whip, and it was learned that Delphine would stand on the stool with the whip in hand so as to gain more momentum for stronger beatings, because she was short.
Yeah.
And if she stood on a stool, she got a lot more downward force.
Yep.
It's disgusting. Even more appalling, there were bottles of blood found, revealing that Delphine extracted blood from the slaves. Several of the tortured men and women looked like they had been part of some terrible medical experiments. And this is when I say, depending on the gossip and straight up lies told, I do not believe the intestine story.
Yeah.
Because nobody could live. But do you want to tell that story?
There was one of the stories was that there was a, what's the word? Like a slice down one of the slaves' backs. And intestines were pulled out through the back and wrapped around their body.
And they were somehow still alive and talking.
Yeah.
See, I don't believe that.
I mean, I didn't read the part that they were still alive.
Oh,
so,
really? Yeah. Different ones, yeah. Because once they were dead, she buried them. No, if you look at those crazy stories, they were under the floorboards.
Yeah.
No, they were not.
How about the skull one? Do you believe that one?
Where she put a stick in there and was making a soup?
A wooden spoon, yeah.
No.
Okay.
That comes from the head wound, the woman who was hit so hard that she had a wound and she couldn't really walk. I believe that because the judge said that as a sworn statement. But again, a lot of people were jealous of her because she was a strong female in this society. She wore the pants in her relationship. She was independently wealthy.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of jealousy to be had by women and men in this society. And when this happened, they were all horrified. But, it's kind of like interesting. Like, oh my gosh, it wasn't me, but look what she did. Oh my gosh, did you hear this story?
Yeah.
And so I think that word of mouth gossip.
Oh, and honest, it still happens today. Whenever there's a travesty of any kind, there are people who blow it out of proportion and make things up. And then you have to filter through what's real and what's not real. Which
is what I was doing for literally 3 hours on the couch.
Oh, yeah.
I looked, I'm like, wait a second, it's 5 already? Look again, it's 7. Holy crap, I'm done. I'm done with this. So there are stories about these medical experiments, and it's straight up gossip. So none of this is true, but these are stories that were told.
Yeah.
Quote, a woman was trapped in a small cage with her limbs broken and reset to look like a crab. Another woman with arms and legs removed and patches of her flesh sliced off in a circular motion to resemble a caterpillar. Some of the slaves had had their mouths sewn shut and had starved to death, while others had their hands sewn to different parts of their bodies. These rumors were never substantiated, and it's believed they were just a good example of oral history, gossip, sensationalism, jealousy, whatever you want to call it.
Also mixtures of Elizabeth Báthory, which is, for some people, you might know it as Elizabeth Bathory because that's how it's spelled. But the whole collecting blood, she's known as like a famous vampire in today's mythology and everything, but because she collected blood and like some people say she drank it or bathed in it.
There was never any accounts that she actually did that. People just said
exactly
that.
Yeah.
So that's sensationalism.
But she tortured her servants all the
Yeah,
time. She lived in I can't remember where, one of the Slavic nations in that area, like Eastern European.
Vanias, yeah.
But she would like dump her servants in water, like just completely drench them and then make them lie naked in the snow overnight.
Yeah.
And terrible things like that. So she was another type of these powerful women who just had this evil streak to them.
And I also, when I was reading this, I also read that it was a historian, and he had said along the lines of, it's because of the repression of the females in those societies. You were so angry over being treated like a, chattel that you wanted to hurt something else as much as you were being hurt. That is no excuse.
Yeah.
But they think that's like when you snap.
That's simple projection in psychology terms,
Yeah. So in any case, with this, so I don't believe, I believe they walked into a room where slaves were tied up and they were wearing spike collars and they saw a whip and they saw the stool and they could put two and two together. But there was no discussion about a cage up there. So I think they walked into these mutilated but alive slaves, and that from there, the stories went crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I believe, based on everything I've read.
I agree.
But the newspaper covering the story did not go into much detail because the scene was so horrific. All the newspaper stated was, quote, "Language is powerless and inadequate to give a proper conception of the horror. We shall not attempt it, but leave it rather to the reader's imagination to picture what it was." Well, when you leave it to someone's imagination and don't write the freaking thing up, people are going to leave it to their imaginations. And
well, even, again, by today's standards, like, it's not proper to put that kind of stuff in a newspaper, you know.
Well, this is genteel society. You're not.
And exactly. This is back then, and
yeah. Well, and this is where like I've compiled everything and I have my opinions, but the room itself suggested that LaLaurie bought slaves only to torture them. She kept regular slaves within the regular parts of her house, but the ones found in this apartment seemed to have been brought there only for abuse. In total, they found 266 iron collars with spikes.
Wow.
Which forced a slave to keep his or her head in one position. If you don't know what that is, God bless you for not knowing what it is, but it's horrifying. You cannot sleep because you're stuck in one position. If you put your head down, the spike goes into your skin.
Yeah, because picture a metal manacle, neck-sized, but there are large spikes pointing inwards to your neck. So if you lean forward or backward or left or right, you get poked.
Oh, yeah. The cowhide whips were stiff with blood and were hung on the wall. It was learned that LaLaurie beat her slaves daily, and according to some sources, would go up there right after breakfast every morning and beat them until she was thoroughly exhausted and could not lift her arm. And then she would go about her day. Get that out of you.
Got her cardio in.
I guess.
Jeez.
Yeah. This led to the crowd's rebellion, and over the next 2 days, they destroyed every inch of the once beautiful mansion. Valuables were destroyed. Now, it does say that some things probably were stolen, but it wasn't a usual riot where you're breaking in, taking stuff, running. No, they were breaking everything they could because they were so angry.
Yeah.
It said they even carried her heavy furniture up to the top of the multiple story house, whatever stories it was, and they hurled it to the ground just so it would all break that way. They also brought axes to chop everything down. Now, during this time, LaLaurie left for France.
Yeah.
She first went to Mobile, Alabama, and then from there hopped and got over to France. And she lived there until she died in 1849. There was talk of her wanting to come back because she wanted money, and that her one person in charge of her accounts wasn't sending her enough. But her son's like, maybe you should stay here, Mom.
Probably shouldn't show your face.
You should probably stay here. The tortured slaves that were found were taken to the mayor's office at the Cabildo, where they were given medical treatment, food, and drink. And unfortunately, this is where some of them were killed out of the niceness of people, because we learned, in World War II, you don't just give lots of food to people who have been in a concentration camp. Their stomachs can't handle the food.
Right.
Since they were trying to feed these poor souls who have not had food, they got more sick. And so some of them unfortunately passed away. But they were available for public viewing, so people could see the tortures done by LaLaurie. By April 12th,
oh my,
Eli's birthday, The New Orleans Bee reported that up to 4,000 people had been there to view them.
Wow.
And they were done destroying the house at that point. So happy birthday, Eli, on Friday.
Yeah.
That'll be the anniversary of done attacking the house.
And congratulations, you're free. Now you're a sideshow.
Yeah. No, the reason why there wasn't just it was because you didn't really have hospitals then. Like, this is where they went for medical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, some people call it, like, the jailhouse, but really the mayor's there. It wasn't just as a spectacle. It was there to say, like, look what someone in the high class society did, but it was also, we need to help them out. So it was around the clock care. But anyway, the New Orleans Advisor, another newspaper, claimed, too, that they found the bodies of deceased slaves, and they said, quote, "We understand that in digging the yard, bodies have been disinterred, and the condemned, well, having been uncovered, others, particularly that of a child, were found." So when they went into the condemned well, they found more bodies.
Wow.
And so the body of the child, they think, was Leah, the child, 10, 8, 12-year-old who fell. Yeah. Now, much of the stories have been since debunked. And the main reason they exist at all is actually due to a smear campaign of a neighbor who was in love with Delphine. And that's why the intestine story, I do not believe. Mm-hmm. His name was Monsieur Montreuil. And from what everyone says, he had a bout of unrequited love toward Delphine. Mind you, she is married to a dude, well, the third of the dudes at this point, but he is in love with her. When she ran away, he told elaborate and untrue stories to avenge his anger toward her. I guess she should have run toward him, taken him with her? I don't know. In a New Orleans magazine on February 4th, 1934, I just love getting close and close these birthdays. All this was brought to light. The author, Megs Frost, wrote, quote, "Her indulgence of her slaves was well told by friends. She would hand half-empty wine glasses at dinner to the slave who waited behind her chair, insisting that they drink it. Her coachman was fed to sleekness." Well, they describe it like, he's a horse, but that's the time period. But the idea here is that at least the slaves who are, again, like in her regular household, she's feeding. She's taking care of. Mm-hmm. People witnessed her giving her half-drunk wine glasses to her slaves, feeding them. And there's a whole story that possibly her coachman, who was black, she and he were a thing.
Yeah.
And he stays with her. Like when they get in the coach and they ride away, he's the person, like he's the person
in the
driving.
Getaway vehicle.
Yeah. He takes them where they need to get going. He could have stayed there. He didn't. He chose to go with them. Yeah. And I don't think it's Stockholm Syndrome. I think it would really be because she had feelings for some of her slaves. Mm-hmm. And so again, you have to unravel the past and all the stories. And this Monsieur Montreuil, like if he was telling, lies, okay. And in response to Leah, the little girl who was pushed or fell to her death, she was actually, quote, "sliding down a curving banister, playing and fell, being killed by the marble hallway door."
Oh.
So you got a silly kiddo hopping down the, boom, hits her head. That's that.
Yeah.
Now, we'll never know the truth of all of this since the house was destroyed. Mm-hmm. LaLaurie ran away and nothing was filmed. There's no cameras back then.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is not a great way to get solid information.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously she definitely was a murderer. She was definitely a torturer. There's no question about that. No question. Because the judge was...
That's indisputable.
Yeah, under oath when he says things. But I think a lot of the stories, you're right. When you hear about Bow 3 and stuff, you start adding on to the story.
Yeah.
And when he's like, "Hey, did you hear this about LaLaurie?" You're like, "Yeah, I already heard it." No, did you hear the new thing? Because you want to be a part of the story. You want to be that person who's like, "Well, I have something new to tell you," even though it's probably a lie. Mm-hmm. But regardless, if the additional jazz are true, much torture, hatred, and mayhem happened in this house in New Orleans because this Madame LaLaurie's mansion is said to be incredibly haunted and possibly the most haunted location in America. Fun fact, Nicolas Cage owned it for a bit.
For a year.
I think it was 2 I think it was a total of 2 years. Because he just saw it after 2. Yeah.
He had it for like 07 and 08. So like those 2 years, but it was... Yeah.
For sale for part of it, yeah.
Yeah, it was too... Did you hear why? He did it so he could, quote, write a horror book, a horror novel. And then when he sold it, he's like, I didn't get very far in that novel.
Oh, no. So, first things first, for ghosts, they say that there's a dark entity within the property, and even those who are outside on the sidewalks feel this deep evil.
Mm-hmm.
Many mediums get a dark vibe and feel sick when they're in close proximity to the house. And there are stories of people who pass out, vomit, or have other very visceral reactions to the darkness that seeps from the doors. The story continues, too, that there may actually be a demon in the house, as one man died in 1894 when the mansion had been rebuilt and converted to apartments. He was brutally murdered and his belongings were ransacked, but nothing was missing. One of his friends said that the tenant had been having problems with, quote, sprites in the apartment. And, of course, this is bad spelling. It could be spirits, but spirits, close enough. The demon lived there, the one that was living there, I should say, said it would not rest until that tenant had died. So, could a demon have killed him? Well, no one's going to know, but again, there is, they say, a dark entity.
Yeah.
So, was it LaLaurie, or was it a demon that was, like, just kind of drawn to this location? Who knows? They also say that there are groans, moans, and the screams of the slaves who are kept in the uppermost rooms. The sounds are said to be very common, and you can hear them regularly. However, you have to be up in the upper recesses of the house, not anywhere else.
Yeah. Also, the sound of dragging shackles and chains is another common thing. Yeah, they say that one of the reasons why they don't give tours of the place, other than the fact that it was privately owned for a long time, but is that it's too violent in there, and that they do not let people in.
Others say that it's not violent at all, and it's fine. All the ghosts have moved on.
Yeah.
We'll never know because you can't get in there.
Yeah, you're not allowed in. Only, like, Jack Osborne's show, and... No, his isn't too bad.
But did Zach Wilkins get to go in?
I know.
Good.
Not that I could see anyways. Like, there were very few people who were ever allowed in there. And even if you try Googling it, like, you can't find pictures of the inside of that place.
Yeah, just the outside. Can't. Yeah. They like their house the way it is, PJ. Dead bodies and the floorboards and all. There were no dead bodies under the floorboards.
Yeah, that was one of the overblown stories, is that as they were renovating, not during the fire.
When they returned the house.
They heard, like, cries under the floorboards, and they pulled up the boards and saw eyes looking up at them from, like, slaves who were trapped, like, underneath the floor.
And there were scratch marks on the wood because they hadn't been buried dead. They'd been buried alive. Yeah. Nope. Just the torture chamber.
Yeah.
Now, fun fact, another ghostly story. The mansion was also an all-girls school during the Reconstruction, and it was actually an all-girls school for African Americans. Many of the girls would come to their teachers with bruises and scratches all over their arms, and when asked where they had come from, the girls would say that it was that woman who did it. Some assume it was Delphine not so happy to have so many African Americans under her roof. Again, no images were taken, so this may in fact be hearsay and fake. However, it does make for a pretty cool story.
I would believe it, to be honest.
It's close enough to her death. And there's a story that, she dies in December 1849 over in France, but she wanted her body to be interred in New Orleans. And so there's a story that her body may have been buried in France initially in Montmartre, but then it was exhumed and taken to New Orleans, and it's actually there.
I mean, even if it's not, she spent so much time and energy in that house that she could have easily just gone back to it.
Yeah. And she wanted to. She wanted to come back to New Orleans. Apparently she thought it'd be okay.
Yeah, there she goes.
She cray-cray. So is Delphine haunting her former home? Is there a demon lurking there? Or is it all bupkis? No one's ever really going to know, because as you said, we can't get in there.
Yeah.
But one thing is for sure. The Mad Madame Delphine LaLaurie will go down in history as one of the most disgusting and terrifying serial killers America has ever had. The end. And so ends my tale of La Monstrous. I got that wrong. I pronounced monster wrong. I'm tired. But that's all I have on the Macabre Madame LaLaurie. PJ, anything you want to add?
No, I mean, this one is such an infamous story. And props to you for filtering through all the random, overblown, crazy stuff and that's out there.
Did you see how many pages I had?
Oh, it was insane. Yeah.
That wasn't even all of it.
Oh, I know.
It was so much, PJ. But I didn't mind it. And it was kind of fun because, like, whenever I get into my researching mode, I'm Charlie Day from Pacific Rim, and I'm like, but wait, there's more. And that's when I started picking up the wrong things. Like, she had to be 13 when she was married. and her first time, and the child was either 8 or 10 or 12, depending on what you're reading. Well, now I'm like, probably not true. I mean, I was like really into it. I had to put it down and close my eyes a couple times because like my brain hurts.
Yeah,
but I enjoy doing that kind of research, so I enjoyed this one. And all the dates: January 12th, happy marriage. February 4th,
marriage.
So close. Well, for her marriage.
Oh, for her.
Not for us. Happy birthday to me. Happy marriage for them. February 4th, April 10th through 12th, which is why I waited till now because it's this week. So happy anniversary to them, to the burning down of the la-di-da-di-da. Happy thoughts. Eli's birthday is on Friday. Happy birthday to our son. But don't forget that on April 13th, the very next day, we're going to be at Helix Tabletop Guild in Bloomsburg, PA.
Yes.
Please come on down to support them. I love their annual charity event for Janet Weiss. It's such a great place for children. And we have offered 2 raffle baskets for them.
We did.
For Games Overboard, you made a viticulture basket.
You get 2 wine glasses, 2 bottles of wine, 1 white, 1 red, and the board game Viticulture, where you make wine.
And the wine glasses, though, are special.
The wine glasses have dice embedded into them.
Yeah, it's
so
D&D
awesome.
dice. It's so cute.
Yeah.
And then for the Well House Exorcism, our paranormal expert Carrie and I made a spooktacular type of basket. You get 2 different books about scary stories. You get honey spoons, because it's basically a tea and coffee basket.
Yeah.
So you get 2 books for reading. You get honey spoons to dip into your tea. 2 different spooky mugs. One that it has a ghost as the handle and says "boo" on it. It's really cute. The other one is a 2-sided mug. It's black and it says "I'm here for the booze," and it's ghost holding wine glasses to match PJ's thing. But the other says, "If you got it, haunt it," and it's on a tombstone. There's Death Wish dark roast coffee in there. There's 2 different types of loose leaf teas. One is Edgar Allan Poe, and the other one is Mary Shelley tea, Frankenstein tea. And they're loose leaf, so there is a skull and crossbones, like adorable, like tea diffuser. Is that called? Tea diffuser? Steeper. Thank you. I'm getting tired now. But that's the main stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of things to cuddle up, in a comfy chair,
so
drink a hot drink, read a scary book. And
drink your spooky coffee, drink your spooky tea, read your spooky book.
Yeah. And they're like real spooky stories, right? It's not like a horror novel.
Yeah, one is Haunted Asylums, the other one is like 10 spooky like true tales.
Yeah,
I think they were actually Pennsylvania specific too. Paranormal expert Carrie helped me pick them out. So it's a cutesy, like, curl up and enjoy your spooky stuff kind of basket. I know that Maggie's Casket, Jamie, would love them. So again, if you get bored and you just buy the raffle tickets, it's a silent auction. So you put your ticket in and hopefully you win. So please come down. It is 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on April 13th. If you come and tell me a spooky story, I'll give you some kind of a gift. I ordered more car magnets and buttons. So hopefully we'll have those in on time.
Yeah.
But regardless, have a great week. Happy birthday, Eli. And as always, think spooky thoughts.